As far back as Babylonian times, ancient astrologers divided life into 12 different categories. They understood that life contained a myriad of activities, emotions, of work, of ambition, hopes, dreams, and of course relationships. These astrologers named 12 categories of life into houses. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to have you here. In this series, we are now going to get into the houses. The first series was about understanding your sun, moon, and rising. Each house represents a separate area and specific function of your life. There's a house for domestic life, personal wealth, the house of marriage, a house of career, and the list goes on. Your horoscope, which is a map of your individual personality, consists of all 12 houses. Okay, so let's get into it. So we have the first house, which is the house of self. This is the most personal and the most powerful planet in your chart. It symbolizes your mannerisms, your style, your disposition, and temperament. This is a house of your outward behavior, your likes, your dislikes, and ultimately reveals the way you present yourself to the world, and also the way that the outside world perceives you. It often also dictates your physical characteristics, especially in your head and like your facial features. So oftentimes you can tell in these moments where you'll look at someone and you'll be like, oh, maybe they have a rising Cancer sign, then that means they'll have more like round faces, or either really busty and like feel very nurturing, or they'll have this sort of crab-like nature. So you'll be able to pinpoint and guess based off of the way that you perceive them and their physical characteristics. Sometimes this house is considered this house of self-interest. It denotes what you want in life and how far you're willing to go to get it. The place in your chart at which this house, the first house, begins is the most important part in your horoscope. And let me tell you why. Because it determines where all of your other houses will follow. You are a rising Gemini sign and you have your rising ascendant in Gemini, then that means that you'll have Gemini in your first, and in your second house you will have Cancer, and then in your third house you will have Leo, and in your fourth house you'll have Virgo, and the list goes on. So if your first house is Aries, then your second house would be Taurus. So it really just dictates exactly where all of the other houses will land. But this is why you can't really find your rising sign unless you have your exact time of birth, your exact birth date, location, and of course the birth date. So in conclusion, the first house is thought of as this giant lens through which the rest of your chart is seen and interpreted. To help me like really understand and put all of the pieces together, it's like a big puzzle. So when I think of the first house, I think about Aries. Aries is the sign of initiation. They're the first sign of the zodiac. They oftentimes are action oriented. It's almost as if they're putting themselves forward, and that's how I relate this house to the house of self, the house of taking initiative for yourself. And so as you're rising, it's just understanding these two elements, that Aries, their natural characteristic is in relation to self and in correlation to initiating and allowing yourself to be seen. And then we're going to get into the second house. The second house represents money and possessions. It relates to what you own in life and what you will acquire in your future. Your income, your financial prospects. This is the house of movable possessions, the things that you physically take with you as you move through life. The second house also tells you how you feel about your money and your possessions and gives you a clue to the kinds of objects that you like to have surrounding you. To a certain extent, it gives you an idea of your ability to handle money and to earn money. The second house also shows sort of what activities serve as a lucrative way of making money. I like to compare this house to Taurus. Taurus is also the second sign of the zodiac as you go down the wheel. And I'm talking about Western astrology, of course. They tend to have this flair and appreciation for beauty. Taurus is ruled by the sign of Venus. Taurus's planet is Venus, and therefore they're about beauty and just the things that are really beautiful and timeless and have this sort of luxurious nature. And so naturally, I'm going to think about their house, the house of money, the house of possessions, because they're all about beauty. And that alone is truly like about how you manage the things that you possess, how you feel about the things that are materially and physically around you. Those are some aspects that really can dictate someone's behavior. If you have your second house in Leo, for instance, you might love the grandiose gestures that are provided for. You might love to be surrounded by gold and things that are a little bit more bold and extravagant, because Leos just are very charismatic. They're ruled by the sun. And so it's really about merging these two elements and better understanding what happens when these two planets come together, and understanding the vibe and the essence when two things are mixed together and put into one. I hope that helped. Now we're going to get into the third house. The third house is ruled by communication, and I think that understanding where your third house is can bring you so much clarity in your gifts of how you can pursue the world that you live in, how you can hone in on your skills of communication. Because when you get to look at these two planets, you'll better understand how you respond and interact with people around you, and how do you communicate your needs and your wants and your desires. So the third house relates to your immediate environment in three major areas: self-expression, your family ties, and day-to-day travel. So it's just truly like how you communicate through your days, every single day, day in and day out, with the people that you love and the people that you surround yourself with. I guess you can't really say the people that you love, but typically you try and spend the time that you have with the people that you care about. So this house governs the way that you speak, the way that you think, the way you come up with conclusions in your mind logically. How do you create concepts, and how do you come up with ideas? Logic, memory, and manual skills are in this domain. The third house also sort of indicates what sort of early education you received and your ability to study and to learn. Your relationships with your brothers, your sister, your uncles, your aunts, neighbors, all of this are part of this influence in this house. So short trips and vehicles for this type of travel are governed by the third house, especially the travel that you do for work or for education. Okay, so I love to relate this to the sign of Gemini. Gemini, they're the twins. They relate to the third house primarily because they're the twins, and the twins, if you have a Gemini sort of nature or spirit, you'll understand that you're constantly comparing the two options and the two best options that you have. And so you're always constantly logically processing everything, and you always view life and view everything from the standpoint of the twins, from two options, and therefore it gives you this sort of better concept of how to communicate with everybody and create more harmony. Geminis are really good at figuring out and analyzing the people around them, their thoughts. They're kind of similar to Virgos in a sense that they're constantly dissecting things, but then they also have this sort of Sagittarius nature because they're quite open-minded and eclectic by nature. If you look at a Gemini style, they're also kind of like quirky and fun, but then they're also really playful and youthful in a sense and colorful. You'll be able to see that in their outward appearance, and they'll feel kind of like a chameleon. They're always thinking in different ways, And so they never stick to just one idea. They're not fixed like Capricorn. They don't just have one style. They like to explore and try out different things constantly. The fourth house is the rulership of the house of the home, also ruled by Cancer. Cancer is all about the home. The fourth house governs your home life in the past, present, and future. It indicates the kind of home that you had in your childhood and your relationship with your parents. What you have brought home from your ancestors is in this domain, in the house of the home. In the present, the fourth house relates to the kind of home you make for yourself. Your current domestic affairs are in this house under this influence, as are real estate, your holdings, your ownership of land. It's truly how you're going to nurture your home. This house also rules the closing end of your life, the kind of security that you seek in old age. The fourth house is considered one of the more mystical houses because it represents a lot of what you keep protected and secluded and just personal and secluded from the rest of the world. It's the place that you call home, not just from a physical place, but from also an emotional place. I relate this to the fourth house and Cancer. Cancer is also the fourth sign on the astrological wheel, and Cancer is considered the mother of the zodiac. The opposite of Cancer would be Capricorn, and they're considered the father of the zodiac. And therefore, Cancer rules the home, the mother, that nurturing energy, how you like to be nurtured, how you like to live at home when you're comfortable and cozy. When you think about a home, you think about the mother that is cooking, the mother that is bringing the warmth, the mother that is nurturing, Mother Nature, Mother Gaia. There's this sense of comfort. And okay, now we're gonna get into the fifth house. The fifth house is the rulership of creativity and sex. The fifth house rules over everything that you do for pleasure and express yourself creatively. Your sexual nature, the most basic creative urge on your psyche, is a large part of this domain. Children and the joy that you received are rulership in this domain. The fifth house relates to entertainment, your holidays, how you like to enjoy your holidays, amusement, and the arts. It rules love affairs, new undertakings in life, speculation, gambles, things that are a little bit spicy, the things that kind of rule pleasure. So it's the house that expresses your artistic talents. When you're an artist and you're creating, you are so in the flow that you kind of forget about everything else that's happening. So it's about your nature of like being free flowing. It holds sway over all of the things that you instinctively just want to give into. This is the house of your heart. About the fifth house and Leo. Leos are just the sun. They're the life of the party. They're typically extremely charismatic. They have this light that is glowing, and you can typically spot a Leo when you're in a room. Usually have really great hair and kind of regal. And there's this nature where when a Leo is excited and passionate and talking, you can see it in their eyes. You can feel that energy, you can feel that light, and there's this sort of undeniable nature of like loving it because they're exuding this energy, and it's this fire and this flame within. I mean, there's a reason why Leos are fiery. They're a little bit fiery by nature. Oftentimes they look really good in red. I don't know what it is, but they have really beautiful, luxurious hair. There's just a lot of things that you can kind of see that a Leo really enjoys. Sometimes the affection, they enjoy the nicer things in life. They really truly know how to pamper themselves. And so it's really about how you enjoy yourself, how you enjoy your holidays when you get to relax. So the next house we have is the sixth house. The sixth house represents service and of health. Often called the house of service to others, it indicates your need and desire to be helpful to the world and to those around you, and how you're going to be of service to those around you. In the olden days, it governed the way that you would treat a servant, for instance, and of those who were of inferior standing. It's kind of like how you would treat somebody if they could do nothing for you. In modern day, though, this house represents how you treat the people that you work with those who are subordinates, with those who are your employers. The sixth house also relates to your state of health, and especially illnesses that are brought upon when you experience stress, worry, or sort of emotional upsets. This house signifies whether or not you have a sort of robust or delicate disposition or delicate constitution, what kind of diseases you might be subject to. I think about Virgo. Virgo is the next sign on the zodiac wheel, and they tend to be perfectionists. When I think of the sixth house, it's about your everyday to day habit. You have these habits that you form, and these habits will dictate your health and your wealth, your wellness, and your well-being. And if you don't take care of this sector, and you don't take care of your sixth house in the best way possible that suits your sign, then naturally you're going to have long-term effects that will deter you from living and experiencing a very healthy lifestyle. I also think it's funny and ironic because a lot of Virgos think of life that way. They are all about being of service to others, and that's how they respond to life in general. Honestly, Virgos are the type of people who are there for me. They're the ride or die. I love my Virgos in my life. I understand them because they honestly give themselves the hardest time, and they're probably one of the most selfless signs of the zodiac. You'll find oftentimes that Virgos tend to go into sectors that are of service to others, and just by being of service allows them to feel more fulfillment in their lives. But I think they have to also be careful, because if they sort of don't also think about themselves and become a little bit more mindful of what their own needs are, they could easily get swayed, and they could easily feel unfulfilled. On to the seventh house. We're halfway there. The house of partnerships and marriages. On a personal level, this house relates to your husband or your wife, and ultimately just the mate that you choose in life. It often indicates what type of marriage you'll have and whether or not you might divorce or remarry. This is your house in partnerships, not only in marriage, but also in business relationships. Your business relationships, legal affairs, and sometimes in politics. It covers legal contracts that you enter into. The seventh house concerns your ability to work harmoniously with others. Paradoxically, it governs what astrologers call open enemies. Those who are usually your sort of adversaries in business or professional world. The seventh house is the opposite of your first house, which is self. Here is where you blend your personality with others in order to pursue a higher goal, a shared goal. This is probably the most difficult part for every single person in their chart, just to understand that we are all viewing things from our own perspective, and to be able to harmoniously come with somebody who's practically viewing life from the opposite spectrum, we're able to better understand not just them, but ourselves. When you think of this sign, the seventh house is in partnership with Libra, and Libra is literally the sign of the scales, the balancing scale. I'm just gonna try to add the signs up in here if I can. So they're all about balancing the scales. So when you try to think about Libra, when you try to think about marriage, it's always about trying to find a middle ground, a balancing act. It's kind of like the idea that everything in moderation. Okay, now we're gonna get into the house, the eighth house, which is probably my favorite house, the house of death and regeneration, also ruled by Scorpio. The 8th house is also one of the most mystical houses. When I say mystical, oftentimes I'm referring to them as the houses that are water signs. The 8th house is probably one of the most difficult to understand because you are going into the depths of life and the depths and knowing of what it means. What does death mean? What does it mean to regenerate? Sometimes called the house of spiritual transformation. It rules the life force that surrounds sex, birth, death, and the afterlife. It concerns legacies and what you inherit from the dead, both materially and spiritually. It's money that belongs to your partner. Taxes and debts are in this house. Surgery is governed by this house since it relates to regeneration. This is the house of psychic powers, occult studies, and just knowledge. So Scorpio, I'm sure you've heard about the intensity of Scorpio. Scorpio by nature, you can kind of already feel the energy of a Scorpio based off of their intensity. Oftentimes they have really intense eyes. They're really passionate. Sometimes there's this darkness that you feel. They're willing to go into the depths of their emotion. They're kind of fearless, and I think of them as the most fearless zodiac as they're willing to go to the depths and they're all about transformation. They go through a lot of emotional turmoil early on in their life and they learn to regulate it. They also are very protective and keep their secrets hidden. They like to keep it to themselves because they feel very vulnerable. And so this is a really interesting mystical part of your chart that you can really dig into and really truly better understand the depths of who you are and how you think about life and what you think will happen in the afterlife, and this will dictate that. I'm just gonna make this comment, like, sometimes I think there are things that just are getting in your way and you need to just overcome them. It's about overcoming all of the challenges that you face. And if you're serious about your goals and the things you want to do, then you will get through it and you'll push yourself and you'll force yourself. If you're not, you're not going to. Okay, so we are at the 9th house, the house of mental exploration and long distance travel. The 9th house can be thought of as the widening spectrum of the 3rd house, which the 3rd house rules communication. I think of Gemini. Gemini is all about the twins and they're expanding their minds through the concept of their mind and just always understanding things and seeing things through 2 lenses. So the 9th house is the house of the higher mind. Long journeys of both the mind and the physical body. It concerns actual travel to foreign lands. It governs the meeting of foreigners who have an ability to expand our mind, expand our way of thinking, and also the study of languages. The 9th house rules our public expression of ideas, and therefore it's the house of publishing and literacy. So I always like to think of Sagittarius and how expansive they are. Sagittarius has a way of thinking. They tend to be very philosophical by nature, but then also all about travel and understanding the bigger picture. They're always usually pretty spiritual in a sense because they're seeking answers constantly. And so it's perfect for the 9th house since it represents mental exploration and long travel. We have the 10th house. The 10th house rules the house of career and public standing. This is the opposite of the 4th house, which rules the home. The 10th house rules everything and all matters in relation to everything outside of the home. Your profession, your status in the community, your public reputation. It's been called the house of ambition, aspirations, and attainment. This house also reveals how and what esteem you are held by others. The 10th house rules your image, and how you're displayed to the public in ordinance to your achievements, your power, your position, and the honors that you may receive and achieve. It's the outward expression of your talents and the way you even accept responsibility. It's the place that you arrive at through your own integrity, through your own efforts. This house is a great influence on how you materialize success in life. This house has a great influence on your material success in life. And I just think about Capricorn being the patriarchal representation of the astrological signs, and how Cancer is the mother and Capricorn would be considered the father. And so this aspect is just about the man, how you're going to be the provider, how you materialize things on the external plane. And so through the external plane, it's usually through the achievements, through the things that you gain in your society. It rules your career and your public standing. Okay, we're gonna get into the 11th house. The 11th house represents hopes and friends and wishes. Unlike its opposite, which is the 5th house, which represents creativity and sex and self, this house has to do with long-term dreams and goals, along with intellectual pleasures. This house governs your involvement with groups and involvement with the community, with your work, with your profession, the clubs or societal communities that you're involved with. This house often indicates the kinds of friends that can help you expand and move forth and propel. They can help further your interests and objectives in the highest level. This house represents the harmoniously working together of all people. It represents the idea that each person can bring forth something that they're really good at, and in its entirety create the most harmonious group of individuals that are supporting one another and also individually bringing something to the table. This is the house of idealism and of vision. So I always think about Aquarius. Aquarius is the 11th sign. They're actually an air sign, but they're all about the bigger picture, the vision. They always move forth in a way that serves everybody. They're all about justice, and therefore they kind of have this similarity when it comes to understanding Libra. Libra has a sense of justice and balance, and Aquarius is not afraid of it. They're not afraid to stand up for people. They're not afraid to open their mouth. It's funny because they have this aspect that sometimes makes me think of them as a water sign, but I feel like they're the water sign of the air signs. They're very passionate in their own way and able to see the bigger picture and understand what's best for everybody as a whole, and they're not about being just selfish and focused on themselves. Okay, and then we finally end with the 12th house. This house is the house of sorrow and of self-undoings and of secrets. This is the most mystical of all of the houses. We're at the final end of the zodiac wheel, which is the house of Pisces as well. So this isn't necessarily a negative and gloomy place, but it does define the limitations placed in your life. This house governs disappointments, accidents, trouble, and self-defeat. It rules unseen forces, secret enemies, escapism, asylums, hospitals. There's this sort of unseen nature that's spiritual and a little bit mystical. Hospitals, prisons. The 12th house has been called the house of karma, house of spiritual debt. It represents the rewards and the punishments for the deeds one commits to the world. It's associated with psychic powers and the ability to at last discover the meaning of life. So the 12th house is represented by Pisces. Pisces is also a water sign. As mentioned, we have 3 mystical signs. They're all water signs. And Pisces they oftentimes dream a lot. And there's this dreamy nature about them where they're pretty much living in the clouds. And therefore, this is why I think of the House of Secrets, because there's a lot of questions that can't be answered, and a lot of people question life and the meaning of life. And that's why this is also a very spiritual and sort of mystical house. I wanted to end here. We have gone on for a while now, and I hope that this gave you a better, clearer understanding of the houses. And the next video is going to be on each astrological sign. It allows you to gain a better understanding of how everything is like a puzzle. And when you understand one aspect, it allows you to understand other aspects as well more clearly. And you'll just notice that it's just this web of understanding that we're all linked to one another. And so astrology turns into this huge book of wisdom that is just a compilation of conjunctions and aspects and understanding to create the bigger whole. So thank you for joining me, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye guys.